where I started joining different mastermind groups and really putting myself in rooms with super talented people, there was a couple things that I noticed. Number one is I would get asked all the time, oh my gosh, how do you do it? You've got young kids and you've got multiple businesses and you wear all these hats and oh my goodness, like you go girl, basically. But the problem is that the gentleman next to me was not asked the same question, who I knew had three small kids just like I did. And I'm like, what is happening here? So it's like pointed out with women, but it's never brought up with my male counterparts. The other thing was on the complete other side of the spectrum is waited to have kids till later in life and had really focused on their business. If I'm in this room, and even if I bring my husband and my small child or small children with me, I feel like I should be out playing in the pool. But if I'm out playing the pool, then I'm feeling like I should really be in here learning and growing. And their solution was just to leave the group. And I'm looking at that going, there has to be a better way.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dream Catchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome. And I know I say this a lot, but it's because I have so many amazing guests. But today is a very special day because we went up into one of those countries that begins with the M in the middle of the country in the north. I think it's like way too cold there, but evidently it's nice. We have Brittany Anderson here with us today. Brittany's so amazing, and you're going to find out about things like Trailblaze hers, and she might talk a little bit about her illustrious career in financial services, but I'm not going to steal the thunder. We're going to unpack the journey. Hey, Brittany, how are you?
I am so good. And I'm so humbled by that introduction. I've been equally looking forward to this conversation.
I had to beg her. I was like, Brittany, please come on my show. She was like, this small show, why would I ever come on a show at that level? I only do the biggest. I am in the biggest masterminds. I'm in the biggest. Brittany would never say anything like that. She's far too humble.
Really, you're setting me up here.
So, Brittany, you're in Minnesota, Minneapolis. Where do you live?
In the heart of southern rural Minnesota. So where I actually live is a town of, I think, just over 2,000 people. So yeah, we're not in the hustle and bustle of Minneapolis or any of the big cities. We are in rural country. We've got cornfields, bean fields, some hog farming. We're like one of the top hog farming communities in all of the nation. So there's some cool stuff cooking here.
Well, you said everything but the N word. So if I'm not mistaken, recently you purchased a nursery.
Yes, a nursery greenhouse operation. Long story short, I've been taking my kids up there for a lot of years to do their plantings around Mother's Day. And we just love like the heart of the business and how it's so community based. So yeah, it came up for sale. The previous owners were ready to retire. And my husband and I decided that let's add another venture to the portfolio. Let's do something new and different.
Now, I mean, you don't normally hear of people buying small businesses, especially businesses with perishable goods like a nursery. Um, did you grow up in a nursery business? How does one decide that they're going to take on a venture like this? Like, what qualifies you to buy a nursery?
Absolutely nothing. And actually, it's a little ironic because I am the world's worst green thumb. Like, if there's a plant that you could go out and buy that people are like, you can't kill this type of plant, I'd be like, no, watch me. I absolutely can. So, honestly, outside of the business there was a team of people there that are super high quality, that know our community, that have great relationships, and they wanted to stay. And our hearts couldn't take it if some big entity came from wherever and decided to change it into whatever they wanted to. And so, yeah, we have the relationships. Not only did we get the inventory and the perishables and all that good stuff, but we really were in it for the relationships and to support the community. I think that small rural areas often get dismissed. And I think there's a ton of talent and opportunity within them. And I could go on for days advocating for our little hole in southern Minnesota. But yeah, I think that there's so many diamonds in the rough when it comes to small communities.
So, and I bring that up because you're a trailblazer. And
Yeah.
so trailblazers are people who, from my perspective, do things that are unconventional or take risks that most others wouldn't, and they create inroads and opportunities. And so by taking over a nursery when seemingly unqualified, which I don't know that that's actually true because I think you run a pretty big business. Like, aren't you like the president of like a financial services firm that has like close to $1 billion in assets under management?
Yeah, we actually just tipped that mark this year. So we actually managed just over $1 billion in assets under management. Yeah, so I've been in the wealth planning or wealth services business for it'll be 16 years this November. And kind of long story short, I was actually in corporate America. So I was fresh out of college. I had worked for we'll call it a large jewelry store, actually, jewelry store chain. I'd worked my way up at a really young age. I was managing it. And I learned that I may not be the perfect fit for corporate America because if there is what I perceive to be an even better way to do things, I like to implement that. And I like to maybe think outside the box or push outside the box sometimes. So this job ad comes up. I think I was 22 years old at the time. Job ad comes up and I was like, you know what, this sweet financial, I need to check it out. I'm really interested. And there was something honestly that pulled me to want to work there. And I mean, I took a pay cut. I took, call it a status cut or whatever. And, I came in, I was in client service and I quickly realized that I missed leadership and all the stars aligned. The gal that was in leadership at the time moved closer to see her kids. I moved my way up and now today I am president and one of four partners. I'm the only female partner, so I wear that badge of honor with pride. And yeah, it's been an awesome journey, and I'm so grateful for it because man, have I learned business. Growing from I think at the time. Oh gosh, I don't even remember what we were exactly when I came on. I think just about 150 million to over $1 billion today in 16 years. And that's all organic, just in serving people and taking great care of people and building relationships. So that's been the beauty of that business.
Okay. So we 10x the business. Um, that's kind of difficult. Um, and you said you started out in client services, but like, how long have you been the president?
Oh gosh, I think it's been about 3 years now. That I've been the president of the company. I think 2001, if my memory serves me correct. I'm like, it's all kind of a blur. It's been so fast. So a few years now.
21,
Yeah.
2021, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Man, man. So in a world where people don't typically stay places more than 2 or 3 years, you said 16 years with the same small company, if you want to call that small. Um, what is it that made you want to continue to grow with the entity that you were with?
Yeah, honestly, it boils down to being an entrepreneurial culture. Our founder, Mr. Sweet, Brian Sweet, he has always had kind of this eye for entrepreneurship and has been part of different groups and things that have really helped him to grow. And I was able to experience that through the business. And it's one of those things where I think there's some misconceptions around the wealth planning world in general. People often think it's all numbers and markets. And I've joked before that I'm absolutely not your numbers girl. You want to talk about the markets, talk to one of our awesome advisors who pay attention. I am the one who's dealing with the people, the vision, the growth of the company. And I think that when you're able to be within a company, when you're able to lead a company that, focuses on innovation, that focuses on true relationships and service and constantly evolving and constantly growing and introducing new concepts, that's what, at least for me, drove me to stay because I never felt like it was stagnant. I never felt like it was just showing up for a job. It was a greater contribution to something that was even bigger than me.
Wow. Wow. So contribution has been important. Now, you said you're not your numbers girl. You said you're dealing with the people, but there are certain people that have a special place in your heart, I think. You talk about, at least I've heard you talk about women struggling with juggling all of the things that they have to juggle in order to, I guess, be high performing or high powered or the other piece of the power couple. Because, the work at home for a lot of ladies, assuming that they're primary at home, doesn't go away. And so, can we talk a little bit about what you're witnessing with maybe some of your peers or some of your contemporaries as it relates? And maybe a little bit about your journey with the struggle, because you got some little people running around and you already mentioned your husband. So I
Yeah.
imagine you don't just get to go to the nursery, go to the financial services office, and then go put your feet up on the couch and sip wine or whatever your a beverage of choice might be.
Yeah, now that picture sounds amazing. If I could just come home and put my feet up and sip on a glass of wine, count me in. Yeah, it's interesting because, and I'll give a couple examples here. When I think back and going back into even the earlier days where I started joining different mastermind groups and really putting myself in rooms with super talented people, there was a couple things that I noticed. Number one is I would get asked all the time. And to this day, I have three kids right now at the time of this recording. They're 10, 7, and 5. So I do have my hands full, yes. But I would get asked this question all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, how do you do it? You've got these young kids and you've got multiple businesses and you wear all these hats and oh my goodness, like you go girl, basically. But the problem is that the gentleman next to me was not asked the same question, who I knew had three small kids just like I did. And I'm like, what is happening here? So it's like pointed out with women, but it's never brought up with my male counterparts. So that was kind of one thing. Just started noticing, I'll call it patterns. The other thing was on the complete other side of the spectrum is I've met some amazing women who have had massive contributions in their respective space. So two women in particular, I think about one mastermind that I've been involved with for quite a while. We got into conversation and they had waited to have kids until a little bit later in life. Both of them had really similar stories. Waited to have kids till later in life and had really focused on their business. Well, they had this kind of feeling of being torn where they're like, if I'm in this room, and even if I bring my husband and my small child or small children with me, I feel like I should be out playing in the pool. But if I'm out playing the pool, then I'm feeling like I should really be in here learning and growing. And their solution was just to leave the group. And I'm looking at that going, there has to be a better way. There has to be a way that women can feel served at the highest capacity, that they show up in spaces where the first question isn't, oh my gosh, you're a mom. How do you do this? But rather it's, what contribution, it's getting to know the person. It's understanding what's motivated them to get to this point in the first place. Not, wow, you must be really busy. It's like, yeah, I'm busy, but I also believe in impact and there's a path and there's a purpose to all of this. So those are just the kind of, I guess, trends or patterns that I really started noticing in the groups that I was in. And I just decided we as women, we want to be served in a different way. And I love being in spaces with both men and women. So please do not mistake. I am not sitting up here on my pedestal saying that women should be served better or whatever, because I love men, I love women, I love the collaborations, but I just think that there's some different conversations that need to be brought to light.
And so, I think it's an underserved market, especially when it comes to financial services. Women control a lot of the dollars that get spent in the household, whether people want to admit that or not. They might not necessarily be the creator of the wealth outside of the home, but when the money comes in the home, they allocate most of those dollars, but they're not involved in the conversation for transfer or even growth in the markets and so on and so forth. And so, I think it's a very necessary conversation. I've got two girls, and I think that they're going to be pretty well off. One of them's already told me that they're going to be wealthy, and she used the word rich, and she's like, "Daddy, I'm gonna be rich." Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Um, and we were listening to a podcast of a lady talking about abundance being your birthright and how prosperity is something that comes to those who do the things and so on. And she's like, "Daddy, I'm gonna be rich." And the other one, she wants 6 kids, and she was like, "Yeah, we're gonna I'm gonna have my own bus," and I mean, she's planning all the things. And so I like this conversation. I like this line of thinking because I don't want them to have to marry somebody for the sake of the financial education or access to the different rooms. I think they should be able to have it just because of who they are. And so as you were going through this and kind of getting the stuff that you got along the way that allowed you to achieve the levels of success, and we're going to come back to a comment because you're like multiple businesses, but we've only really talked about the nursery and suite, and there's other stuff out there. And we've talked about Trailblazers a little bit, but we haven't even talked about what that is yet. We're going to get to that, but we're going to come back to these other businesses. On that journey, what was it, or how did you get access? Like, where were the doors and how they get open?
Mm, that's a really great question. So I would say there's a couple different things is, again, when I working alongside our founder at Sweet Financial, he has a love of being in rooms. He loves mastermind groups. He loves being in spaces where people are even smarter than he is. And that was one thing that I expressed a big interest in early on. I was like, I think there's something to it. I want to learn. And I've always had this drive to kind of look around me and see what's working outside of wherever I'm at. So like, for example, within the wealth planning space, I like to look and see like what's working in the real estate world, what's looking over here in other service-based industries, and how are there things that, or what are the things that we can actually bring in and apply. So the biggest doors have honestly opened by just deciding to be in spaces where the right people are. There's the adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that was always kind of like a mantra in the back of my head, like, oh, I think there's merit to it. But it's so stinking true. And not in the sense that anybody is there to give handouts, but in the sense that, when you start really putting yourself into the spaces that quality people that are truly givers that want to, contribute in their own way and create impact and in turn help see you succeed too, that's where some of the magic started happening, where people are like, hey, I see you for who you are and what you want to contribute and put out there. And let's get together and see if we can do something really cool together. So I would say there's maybe not like one individual door. It was watching success and watching what that meant, and then putting myself in spaces that have been just life-changing in a lot of ways.
And so that inspired you to want to create Trailblazers, I think, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. And I want to go back to, because you started kind of talking along the lines of like women and wealth and that whole thing. So today, as we sit, women currently control approximately a third of the wealth, right? So when you're talking about how they may not be out there, maybe they're not always the ones that are making it. They're definitely the ones that are controlling it and making decisions. They account for something like, there was a study I was just looking at. I want to say it's like 70% of household spending. And it's estimated that by the year 2030, women are actually going to control 2/3 of the wealth. So when we're talking about this and how you kind of mentioned, especially in like the wealth management world or in these spaces that women maybe haven't completely come into or saturated, there's so much opportunity. And, my biggest belief is that it's not, how do I say it? It's not necessarily that you need to create a niche. Like, women are not a niche in your business. They're the future of your business. So, if you're thinking about this and you're thinking about how do I create kind of my next level value, or, we've worked with so many people over the years that they're exiting a business, they're getting close to it, and they're thinking about where's my next level of contribution. Women need to be part of that. So I just have to point that out because I think it's important. But yeah, so being in different rooms that I've been in, the one thing that I've noticed is that, you look around the room and typically and this is in a favorable condition, it's like 70% men and 30% women. And that's in a group that's actually putting in effort to attract quality women into the room. A lot of times, especially in the industry that I've been in for so long, you walk into that space and it's like 90-10 split. You've got 90% men, most of them in blue suits, and you've got 10% women. And unfortunately, it tends to be divided too. It's interesting. I'm going to share this. I haven't shared this yet publicly, but I spoke somewhere recently, and I'm not going to even give it away where it was because it doesn't matter. But I will say it was industry based. I was on the stage or getting ready to go on the stage, and we were the first females to present for the day. And no joke, about at least a quarter of the men decided that it was time for a bathroom break, that the start of ours was the best time for a bathroom break. And I sat back in my chair and I'm like, this is what is wrong. This is what is wrong in our industry and in others as well, is that people just aren't paying enough attention and aren't giving enough credit. So again, this has all been this like stack of motivation for me to create a space where women can come in, they're seen, they're heard for who they are, for what they're contributing. The first question is not, what do you do or how many kids do you have? It's, what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? What are you motivated by? Who are you? Who are you really? Those are the conversations that I'm creating in the space that I'm creating to have people have those real conversations and not feel like they're on the back burner. So that was a lot. I know I packed a lot in there.
I think we're having a comprehensive conversation. I think people like to make it incomplete. And I say make it incomplete because they want to skip over the pain of what's actually happening. And I think the inequity is a challenge for everybody who hasn't had access to or looking for access to the things that seem commonplace for folks who have had that privilege. Um, so tell me more about the community. You're talking about diving into who you are and kind of not what you do. What is the true, I guess, promise to the folks who become members of Trailblazers?
Yeah. The biggest thing that we are striving to do is to create true connection. And here's what I mean by that. So when you come into our network, again, the first question is, who are you? Like, who are you really behind those layers? And I think back to my own journey and my own path, and one of the biggest catalysts has been just being truly transparent with what I need and what I'm trying to accomplish. If I'm trying to put on a mask or let imposter syndrome set in or whatever the case is, you just don't get anywhere. So within the Trailblazers, we're trying to create this community where you can come in, you say who you are, you can speak to what you need, and then we can actually help facilitate those connections in a truly vetted way. You walk into, and I've experienced this myself, you can walk into different, masterminds, different networks, different communities, and be a little bit blind to maybe who's in front of you. Because a lot of times, and not every time, but a lot of times, if they're not properly vetted, you don't know who the heck you're getting in the room. And that's really what we're trying to avoid here is we want quality women who are not coming in to be pretentious. Like, we want you to show up if you are not feeling it that day and you need to show up in sweatpants and your hair up and no makeup on and whatever it is with whatever's going on in your life, we want you to be transparently you. So, our promise overall is that we're going to show up authentically, we're going to show up transparently, and we're going to create that community for you that can grow and thrive and that you can create the success that you want by your definition, all while being around other like-minded women that are absolutely killing it in their space, but maybe they're not the ones that are, how do you say it? Super public in that way. It's more discreet, right? It's the silent millionaires, the people who are behind the scenes, really trying to create impact in a way that's maybe not loud, but it's impactful.
So it's not braggy. It's not
No.
boastful. It is classy. It is distinguished. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that is dead on. And there's so many groups out there, and I am not naive to that. The term mastermind, I even kind of cringe when I say it these days because it has been so overused and overplayed. And I still think there's merit to it. Like the concept of bringing people together and
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dream Captain. Your dreams should be real. Let's get back to the show.
Masterminding on things. Like there's magic that can happen there. I just hate the word because it's so overplayed. But yes, what we don't want, and sometimes saying what you don't want is easier than saying what you do want. We don't want pretentious. We don't want anybody to feel like they have to show up as somebody that they think they need to be. We show up, we come together. It's classy, I guess, in essence of sophistication, but we also have fun and we're real. And I think that's what's often missing in groups is, being able to lead by example and create that space for people to just be who they are, not who they think they need to be, not have their stage face on or their show face on or whatever that is, because we've all got those. But be just truly authentically who you are every day.
So this is a place to kind of let your hair down and take the mask off. And I would agree with you because you let me come in. I know it's the women's thing. You let me come into your event, your first event. It was a virtual deal. I don't know if I would have got in if it was in person, but you let me into the virtual event and I got to participate in like this hot seat thing where we went around and talked to people about the things that they were working on and did some problem solving. And the way that people were pouring into each other was refreshing for me. In a world where I see a lot of folks competing with each other, like the person who was in the chair, the hot seat, was being vulnerable. They were talking about the things they were really struggling with, and not some, surface level BS where the answer isn't complicated or challenging. And then the folks were asking questions, not to be nosy, but to really understand so that they could respond with something that was going to actually be beneficial for them. And that for me is something that I crave. I crave both of those things, the vulnerability and then like authentically desiring to support or help. And like you got that and something that was really early. And you mentioned like curating the room. You talked about making sure that people were vetted. And I felt like everybody in there was high caliber, high quality, and really interested in just delivering the value. And I didn't feel what I normally feel where people are looking to get all they can get. Like, there wasn't a single person who offered a solution which was buy for me because I could solve your problem. And I just found that to be eye-opening on what happens when you put great women in the same room because I'm fairly certain if it was a room full of guys, somebody would have pitched their services in some of those instances because there were absolutely people who could sell their services to help those folks.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, because that is a huge compliment. And that's exactly the environment that we've been working to create is, and again, I'm going to say this, that when you are good at sales, like when you're good at selling, that is a trait nobody can take from you. And some people can't help themselves. They show up into a space and they're immediately selling because they're like, even if it's not their core competency, they're like, I can still fix this. That's not the environment that we want. What we want is, again, people to be able to speak to the truest issues that they have. And I think back to our inaugural event, there was some tough stuff that was brought up, but they felt like it was a safe space. And all too often, I don't think people, and I won't go too deep down this rabbit hole, but I don't think people, and maybe women in particular, always feel like they have a super safe space, especially once they've reached a certain level of success. Because even sometimes at home, you like these women that we interact with, they don't even feel like they can be totally safe there. Maybe they don't have that ever-ending support from a partner. Maybe they don't have a partner. Maybe they've outgrown some relationships, friendships, uh, love relationships, family relationships, whatever that case is. And it can become really, really lonely. So for us, we said, let's create a space that people can come to and they can ask anything and they can bring up anything. And if it's that their P&L has taken a gigantic nosedive and they're literally in panic mode of what to do, let's talk about that and let's get people around you that can help solve it. Maybe the issue isn't an issue at all. Maybe it's like, I have more opportunity than I even know what to do with. And I'm so overwhelmed. I'm ready to just hang my hat up because I can't do it anymore. I'm burnt out. Those are the conversations that we want to have, but not just to talk about it, to actually create solutions and put people in your life that can help you. Because I have been in groups where I've talked until I'm blue in the face and they're all like, well, carry on, good luck. And you're like, okay, well, I feel a little bit better because I got it off my chest for now, but I'm going to wake up tomorrow and that problem's still going to be here. So true solutions, true solution-based focus. The bottom line is, yes, I am a businesswoman and I am a mom and I'm a wife and I'm a friend and all those different titles. I don't want to waste time. I want strategy. I want support. I want to know what the solution is or what the clear path is so I can make informed decisions to get there. I don't want a space where it's just wordsmithing. And that's what this network is about. It's let's solve problems and let's actually move forward and let's move forward together. Celebrate the wins. Let's pick ourselves up and pick each other up and dust each other off when we have those losses. And let's keep pushing forward together.
Man, that's good. Now, there's a couple of other things that you talk about. I said the juggle struggle earlier, and I want to save that kind of for the end of this conversation. You've been given this talk, and it's something like 90-10 or 80-20. I don't know the numbers, but I understand the concept. And so I would rather that you introduce this to the folks because I think this one is one that is going to make the jaws drop.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here to set the stage. Um, it's the 90-10 concept, and it was born out of, I'll call it two different ends of things. Is number one, burnout. I am the proverbial high achiever brain, right? Like if I'm going to go in on something, I want to be all in, 110, 150% all the way. Um, that's not sustainable. Then on the other side of this is I have been guilty of this, and I've been in so many rooms where I've witnessed this, where people they're killing it in their career. Like they've got control, they're charging ahead, they are, leading the way, they're creating this massive impact until they get home. And then they are a shell of themselves and they're leaving a heck of a lot on the table, and their personal lives are fastly disintegrating, where maybe there's divorce on the line, maybe divorces happen once or multiple times, strained relationships with kids. And so I started thinking about this and I said, okay, how do you curb the high achiever brain a little bit to make sure that that high achiever is still able to strive for and reach for greatness and success, because it's how we're driven, it's how we're wired. But how can we also create this awareness to bring our best selves into our homes so that we're not burning ourselves out in our careers? We're actually showing up as our best in multiple places. So this is where I got this crazy idea about this 90-10 concept. I said, you know what if I allowed myself, this crazy high achieving brain that needs to do all the things? What if I said that I could have permission to show up at like 92%, something like that? If we go back to grade school, that's still an A. That is still an A on a project if you can show up and give 90% of yourself. So I started giving myself these little pockets of grace where it's like, you know what? Today I can't go 150%. I might be able to do that for a couple days, but then I need to pull the reins a little bit. I need to pump the brake just a little bit because I know what burnout on the other side looks like. And in conjunction with that, is I said, all right, so if we were to apply this 90% principle to home too, I liken it to if you have a team, or if you've ever managed people or whatever, if somebody consistently showed up to their job, to what they've been hired to do, and gave it 10%, what would you do? Like, this was consistent. You've had conversation after conversation. They're still not getting it. They're still showing up as 10% of themselves. I would guess that the first solution would be, you know what? We need to start looking at replacement. We're going to fire them. They can't keep doing this. It's killing. I'm leaking money everywhere. So why on earth do we give ourselves permission to show up at 10% at home? It's not right. So I think that by focusing on the 90%, on saying that, you know what, I don't have to be gung-ho all the time, because this also allows me to show up at that 90% at home too. I don't think that the 150 miles an hour, the 200 miles an hour, the whatever is sustainable. And it's, something that contributes to your relationships in a meaningful way. And if we're being real, I don't think it really contributes to our businesses either. We tell ourselves it is. We tell ourselves that we're great and we're achievers, but I don't really think long term it does, because a lot of times what we end up doing is we steamroll the team around us. We lose sight of what really matters, and we end up chasing things that feel good and that give us that dopamine hit versus the things that actually make an impact. So, that in a nutshell is this whole concept that I've really been digging into lately.
What? All right. So, as a business owner, as a president, you're telling your employees that they don't need to be running around with their hair on fire.
It's exhausting. I mean, and again, this is just my true vulnerability here. Like, I've exhausted myself at times. Like, there have been times I am that person who has been so guilty of being like a drive-by delegator. Like, I'm going so fast that I'm running past the team and I'm like, "Hey, can you do this?" Or, "Hey, can you do this really quick?" And they're like, "Really quick? This is like a week-long project. What are you talking about?" So, yes, encouraging people to slow down a little bit, to take a step back and to say, okay, we don't need to go a million miles an hour, because I drive myself crazy. And then you surround yourself with a bunch of people doing that. It's just a whirlwind. It's a tornado and nothing productive. I shouldn't say never, but rarely does true productive work end up happening when you're constantly operating like that. And I think as entrepreneurs, again, we're kind of wired to look for opportunity and look for excitement and look for those dopamine hits. There's some addiction in the entrepreneurial world. So I think that sometimes we just have to slow down, and we have to, again, give a little bit of grace, give some grace here and there.
Ooh, Grace. My youngest daughter's middle name is Grace. I think we all need it, but I don't see a whole lot of people giving it to themselves. I hear the negative self-talk, and yes, I hear the negative self-talk because people verbalize it with me. They show me what they're actually thinking and how they feel, and they have all the proving energy, trying, and they're doing a lot of this stuff because they're trying to be good enough so that somebody will not notice whatever thing that happened when they were a kid that they're still holding on to. Um, I just think it's a radical thought that you would suggest that we slow down and become more productive.
Yeah. And, I'll share this too. Honestly, Jerome, in working with you, and I'll give you the shameless plug here. I mean, it's been a life changer for me. And, a lot of my motivation, I look around the rooms that I'm in, and there's a lot of hurt and pain in the entrepreneurial world. And, you kind of mentioned that briefly here, is that there's something that usually stimulates this. And for me, I look back on my life, and I was raised by a single mom. I am not the golden spoon. Nothing has been handed to me in any way, shape, or form. But grew up with a single mom, and I watched her struggle with bouts of depression, and it was hard for her. She was raising two kids. She was busting her behind. She was taking extra shifts. She was trying to make it all work. And I saw that struggle, and I said, you know what? I don't want that struggle. And that can be a great motivator. And it's been a positive thing for me, but it's also been a detriment in some ways. So, you start out with that. You're kind of watching this unfold, seeing what struggle looks like. I made a conscious decision. I remember I was like 8 years old. And, at that point in time, money was tight. And I remember looking in on my mom when she was sitting on her bed and she's writing out her bills and she's crying while she's got her checkbook in front of her. And I'm like, man, I don't want this for her. And I really don't want this for me in my future. So then fast forward a little bit, and, the kid who bounced back and forth between mom and dad, and living with my dad, he was one of those people that you couldn't just like sit and relax ever. You always had to be doing something. So I would look at achievement and staying busy as a sign of success. So breed those things together, where you're witnessing some depression, you're witnessing, not being able to sit still, stand still, whatever. And that just continued as a catalyst in my life. So again, it's what is Joe Polish? He's the founder creator of Genius Network. He said that workaholism is one of the most accepted forms of addiction. And for me, when I want to disappear and I want to just power through, the first thing that my brain goes to is work. And it goes to honestly a little bit of a place of scarcity at times where it's like, I don't want to fall into that trap that I've witnessed for so many years. And I want to make sure that I prove I'm worthy. So I got to stay busy and I got to do all the things. And it's exhausting after, I'm candid about my age. I'm 38 years old. I don't want to do that for another 38 years. So again, these different businesses, yeah, it can look like it's a lot, but really it's all moving towards that common goal of creating safe spaces, of helping people put boundaries, of helping people achieve the success that they want by their definition. So whether it's in the wealth planning space, it's in Trailblazers, it's in any of the other things, even the nursery, everything that I do, it really aligns towards helping create beauty and possibility and energy and excitement in people's lives so that they can put effort into the impact that they were put on this planet to make.
Woo. That was a mouthful. Man, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, what in the world? The unique combination. So we identified 5 characteristics or 5 events that usually lead to somebody becoming an apex performer, and achievement-based love is one of them, because that's what a lot of our parents use in order to encourage us to get good grades or to do well on the little league team or excel at dance or whatever activity that we're in. It's like, oh, you did this, and so I love you because you did this. And it's not because you're just you, it's because you did the thing. And we just carry that out if we're not careful into a bunch of different spaces that can become really toxic for us. And I think you capture that so well. And then seeing the other side where it's like money struggle, um, pain, torment over it. And what's really interesting about it is your mom probably didn't have access to the same things that you've been able to create access to on your journey. And so you literally open the door that you, if left to just what you could see, couldn't have opened because you didn't know it existed, or you would have assumed that it was locked. And that makes you a dream catcher. The ability to manifest the things that you saw in your mind's eye in reality, and then to turn around and be interested in keeping that side door open if they're not going through the front door, keeping the side door open so that they can all get in. um, I think is one of the most exciting things that can happen, because it is fulfilling. It's not rewarding, it's fulfilling. The ability to change the trajectory of someone's life by giving them access to something or exposure to something that they might not even know is possible is all the magic. And so, part of the reason why I wanted you to come on is to let people know that Trailblazers is here, and I believe it's here to stay. And there is somebody who has found the shortcut, the way in, and is willing to share that with you if you're willing to come in the community. Now, what she didn't say is, we don't want the people who are posturing. She said that. She didn't. She said she didn't want. She didn't say pompous. There was a P word, pretentious. She said she doesn't want pretentious people. The cool people I know say we have a strict no asshole policy, and she's so much more refined. She would never say anything like that. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to live in a world like that, then you need to find out more about Brittany and Wealth Builder. So be like, the people who've made it to this point are curious. They want to know more. Where should they go?
Yeah. So there's a couple different places, but number one is, so at the wealth planning firm, we've got a trademark process. It's called the Dream Architect, and it's so fitting with dream catchers. But we thought, what better thing to give away here than something that ties into that? So part of the biggest struggle that people have, and it's amazing because it doesn't matter the wealth you've accumulated, we've identified this core issue over and over and over again. It's basically being able to get clear on what you want and what that vision of your future is, and to have somebody trusted in your life that can help make you or hold you accountable to it. So we created this tool. It's called the Over Dinner Conversation, and it's basically a prompt for you to get together with somebody that you love, that you trust. It can be a spouse, it can be a dear friend, it could be a coach or a mentor, but something for you to work through that has kind of a systematic flow for you to get really clear on what's important to you and what your dreams look like. So if you want a copy of that, we're going to make it really easy. You can just send over dinner in the subject line to Brittany@BrittanyAnderson.com, and I will make sure that gets to you, completely free. I think it's a great tool. And, there's nothing worse than sitting at dinner anyway, staring at your phone or being disconnected or just being silent. So why not make it purposeful? So that would be a great thing. Also, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to stay active and engage and answer any questions that get shot my way there. So it's just Brittany Anderson. Pretty simple, pretty easy.
Wow. 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 So over dinner is the game, right? We're going to do
Yes.
activity. And like on the backside of doing that activity, I'll know, what am I going to know when I get done?
Yeah, so that's the fun part. Um, so the core thing that you'll be able to articulate is, what is one of your biggest dreams, one of the biggest things that you want for your future. And then in having that conversation with somebody trusted, you're able to actually spell out how you're not only going to commit to yourself, but how you're going to commit to helping the other person get what they want. And it's amazing. There's this old quote, and I want to say it's either a Jim Rohn or a Zig Ziglar, and I'm getting it mixed up right now. But it's, help enough people get what they want, and you'll get what you want in return. So coming from a place of, service, coming up from a place of, truly wanting to help other people make the impact that they want. Part of that is articulating what you want and then helping others get what they want. It's really a simple formula. So that's what you'll come out of with that tool. And, our hope is that it sparks deeper conversations and deeper meaning in your life and those that you love most.
Whew. Brittany, this was amazing. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule, all of your businesses, all of the mom duties, all of the other things that you're involved in, because I know you serve in the community as well. Just thank you so much for sharing your experience. And folks out there, if you're looking for a community, there's not a whole lot of these that exist, especially not with the caliber of people that you'll have access to. And the one thing that we didn't talk about, and I thought we should, but I'm just going to leave it in there as a hanger. Brittany has one of the most vast and capable networks that you can ever think of. I was having a little issue, and I was like, "Hey, B, here's what's going on." She was like, "Oh, that's my buddy. Let me send the email." And within 10 hours, my issue was resolved. So, and I pride myself on my network, but fortunately, B's in my network, so I get to count some of her resources in mine too. But if you can't think of people who can come in and make a problem go away for you in an email or a couple of phone calls, then you need to get connected, because I will tell you that who you're connected to is almost more important than what you know. So, Brittany, thank you again.
Thank you. And Jerome, I will say this again, that you have been such a major catalyst in my life. And I so appreciate you and just all that you do and the contribution that you make.
I'm flattered. That's a big compliment coming from you, because I know who you're connected to. Oh, man. To the listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.